We just got done interviewing Peng right before you came in. Right now he's working on a bee farm. So they're doing that as his farm out there. And it's funny, I was telling him, I said, hey man, it's so cool in the world we live in, especially in the Hmong community. We need more young dads, young men to be examples to some of those young kids growing up, some of the young boys growing up. Nah?
Yep.
I say this with all due respect. It's I just feel, and this is actually even talking to Paku, who used to do HAFA, and she was telling me the statistics on the success rates of among girls graduating from high school, graduating from college, is far exceeding Hmong boys.
Yeah.
And it was something that I don't have any kids, but like as an uncle of a bunch of Hmong boys, and realizing that a few of my nephews are struggling and their sisters are just destroying it. Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. It's one of those things I think about where I'm like, okay, I have to really think about this. Like, I can't just be like, oh, such a like you can't do that. Like that's how it was for me. It was just like, why don't you get this? And I'm like, I don't know. But it wasn't until my hands were, given a knife and ngai and zhao that I felt like I really excelled. Yeah. But then like I was good at it, but what's more about it? Because this is like just chores you do at home.
Right.
So there's no value in this. Right. Like there's no value when if I'm not getting my master's of this or my doctorate of that. There's no value in, zhongai or langai or zhao, And that was a point of shame for me, and I carried it for a while. I was like, whatever, this is dumb. I'm just gonna do my own thing. And I feel like a lot of especially Hmong boys who are good with using their hands to tinker, to build, they feel ostracized a little bit, because I'm more of my nephews. He's really good at making video content, editing and stuff like that. Like he really excels in that, But it's like, it's not your traditional education, right?
Yep. We got to get out of that mindset, and I feel exactly the same way. That's exactly why when we talk about like crafting, we have to bring in all different kinds of crafts, not just like bandao crafts, but like metal crafting. A lot of men did that, or weaving. A lot of men did that too. And so. Really introducing those things and, like you said, bringing value to them so that people realize that there is value to it, and you can make a living off of it, if we can figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, my trip to Laos was super. Last spring I went to Laos and we did some filming out there, and my brain was blown away by the amount of crafting, as you were saying, that the Hmong men did. You wanted a knife? Well, we found a piece of metal. Get it hot, and you're an ironsmith. You're a metalsmith.
Right.
You're the one making it. This idea of building part of your house is kind of falling down. You get with some of the other dudes. You go cut the lumber. You craft it up. You build it up.
Right.
It was just this, or like even like watch. I saw a few of the Hmong guys like sauna, and they were doing like making their bags, or they were fixing up their bags, or they were fixing up like a strap, that they built so that they can have their sheath in for their knife. Like they did it themselves. Yeah. And it was just a thing of one, Yep. And the weaving and everything. Building the weaving machines like for it. Yep. It's just all these dudes who taught it, and then the boys would just like squat down and watch dad
and learn how to do it. Yeah, exactly.
And it's something that I really think that we're kind of, as the Hmong, it's like I talked to Professor Lee Paulna, and it's that it's good that we're advancing as Hmong people, but like we're losing these things. You know what I'm saying? Like you're advancing, these parts are crumbling down, and that's a big struggle. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, like I struggle with it myself. That's been something that I've been trying to figure out. Like what parts do I really want to keep and hold close to here, and what parts are it's okay. Like this isn't a make it or break it kind of thing, Right. So, anyways. Right. But we'll officially start.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was gonna ask, are we starting? Yeah. Or is this
so this is what I like doing. Here's my trick: is when we do these podcasts, I just kind of like start just talking, pick up topic, we start talking, and then eventually we'll come back and do a little we'll just do a little intro. But
cool.
Well, Mai, I've known you for 4 years, 5 years, a little bit now.
Yeah.
You know, I've always wanted to get you on this show because I think what you're doing is exactly what Hmonglish is about. You know, we always talk about how Hmonglish is this idea of being Hmong and being like American or Western also. That it's not a right or wrong. It's not a, oh, if you're Hmong, like then you're right. Or if you're Tumika, you know, it's that balance. You know, growing up, you know, we had to do that balancing. Mm-hmm. If you talk a certain way, you dress a certain way, you're American. If you did a certain thing, it's like, oh, no, you're a Hmong. Like, you know, you're like, oh, you're, you know, just silly Hmong. But we're, you know, Hmonglish is this, I say that it's two beautiful cultures. As they collide, they create a third culture. And for me, the way I make it sense in my head, that third culture is Hmonglish.
Yeah.
What you do is you are, I call it the curator of our culture. You are the curator of our traditions, our stories, who we are, so that it is, in a way, frozen in time, so that we can always go back to it. You archive it, what you do with the Hmong Museum. So I would just love to hear a little bit about your background. Where, you know, are you from the Twin Cities area? You know, where did you go to school? If you went to school, like, how did you get to be the director of the Hmong Museum?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in St. Paul. Went to St. Paul School, you know, elementary school, Eastern Heights, Phelan Lake, lots of Hmong kids there. And then went to Johnson Senior High. And so I was like a St. Paul kid. I grew up there. Ended up going to the University of Minnesota and, you know, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, you know, in college. And I kind of got into learning more about museums there and, you know, just kind of figuring out like, you know, is this where I want to go? And at that time I was already like an adult, right? I was 18, 19, but I still didn't really even know who I was, you know, or anything like that. And so I was like, you know, there's got to be a way for us to know these things, and how do we do that? And I can get a little bit into that, but I'd love to hear about it. Like, what was kind of like the pathway for you?
First of all, did you come from a big family?
Yes, I'm the oldest of 7.
A lot of pressure.
Yes.
Oldest.
Yep, the oldest.
You're like Mulan, you got to bring honor to the family.
Oh yeah. Yep, making the path. And helping my siblings with all their homework. And being the second mom, you know, all of that, right? You
What's
know,
the range for your siblings?
We're all about a year or 2 in between each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys are all kind of close.
Yeah, we're all really close in age. The youngest was born in 1990. I was born in 82, so we're really close, 7 of us. And so we're all, you know, when you were talking about like the American and the Hmong side of things, like, you know, I was like the second mom at home, so I would be done with school, like elementary school, go home, cook, take care of my siblings, make sure they got their milk bottles and, you know, diaper changed and all that stuff. And then at school, I was like, you know, a kid, you know, but at home, you've got different responsibilities as the oldest.
Did you find that growing up, did you just like naturally lean towards that, or was it, you know,
oh yeah, definitely. Something they asked me to do. It was my responsibility as the oldest to make sure all my siblings were behaving and doing what they're supposed to do, helping them with their homework. So if one of them missed out on a homework, it was my fault because I didn't help them with it, you know? So they really relied on me on that.
Because, you know, you're tiny bit, just a little older than me, but I have an older brother and he's, you know, right, you know, between us. And that's how it was too. And it wasn't, you know, it was really interesting because, you know, when you were saying that, how you were helping your siblings with their homework and stuff like that, like growing up, it was like, it wasn't like mom and dad could help us.
Right.
I remember in English, or had some, English homework in elementary school, and they said, hey, when you guys go home, if you guys don't understand this, just ask your mom and dad. They can help you figure out what the verb is. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I remember I sat there, I'm like, my parents don't speak English,
Yep.
but I didn't want to be the weird kid, right? It's
Right.
that whole Hmong and Mika. Like, I didn't want my Mika friends to see what was going on at home, because they don't want to be like, wait, your parents don't speak English? That's weird. You're
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
We're already the weird ones, right? So
Right.
for us, it's like growing up in a predominantly white community
Yep.
in small town, Yeah. So when you're saying that, it's not like, oh, your mom and dad didn't want to help the kids with homework. No, it was like your mom and dad, probably like mine, were both working different shifts, and we were kind of like, for me, like my older brother, they were like, it was like we came home, we knew we had assignments at home.
Yeah.
It was almost like we do our assignments first at home, then you do your homework.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So you did that, and your oldest, you took care of your family a little bit.
Yeah.
How about this? Like, I remember talking to Gia Vang when she first started out with us, and we had this conversation, is you being the oldest, not just the oldest daughter, but being the oldest and thinking about going to college. For you, was there a choice of, I want to go out of state, I want to go somewhere, like somewhere East Coast, West Coast, in Chicago? What was that conversation like? And again, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
Right? The way we grew up, there's no right or wrong.
Right.
Yep.
Right. My dad was super supportive. He was just like, anything you need, if it's education related, I will get it for you. I will make it happen for you. So if I had chosen to go anywhere, I know he would have supported me. And in fact, when I was in high school, I always dreamt of like living on my own, right? Like as a kid, like I'm just like, I'm ready.
Kid.
Yeah, I am ready to leave.
Cool.
Yeah.
If I lived in an apartment like 50 stories up, I saw the whole city. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, maybe I'll move to Texas, Austin, maybe I'll move to Chicago. But I ended up doing PSEO, which is like you're in high school and you're taking college courses.
Credits, yep.
At the University of Minnesota, and I loved it there. So then I ended up going to the U of M, which was in town, and my parents were fine with that. They were good with that.
Did you live on campus?
I was just about to say,
I
did not live on campus the first 2 years, but the third year I did. And my mom was so upset because she did not want me to move out. And I literally lived 5 minutes away from home.
Yeah.
And she was so upset because I think she felt like I was abandoning her, and I was, trying to like live on campus. And
there's that special that special bond between mom and
Yeah.
oldest daughter, first daughter, whatever, I know there's that special bond,
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they've never experienced that as the oldest, right? They've never experienced one of their kids going to college. They want to protect you, and so they're just like, you go to school and come home. That's what they wanted.
It hasn't changed, right? It's like high school still, right?
Yep.
For them, it's like, yeah, you get in a car, you go and do all your classes and whatever. You come home, no more, and then maybe if you have a night class, you go. But it's like you come back here.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. That's what she thought, I should be doing.
Yeah.
But I really wanted that college experience, and so I did 1 semester at the dorms, and that was a really great experience. Just to be able to do that on my own, and I think that also helped my parents feel better, about like us kind of moving either outside of our house or just like that American experience, right? So that they're not as scared. They're like, okay, she did it this time, and it's okay. She came back and she was fine.
Yeah. She hasn't changed that much.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think, I don't know, like I'm just thinking about what it'd be like in the minds of our parents when we like left for college. Like for me, like when I left for college, I was like 3 hours away. Right. And, same thing with my sister when she left for college. She went all the way to Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Like, what do you think is the mind, like as parents, as watching your kids, like majority of their life, all their childhood, let's just say high school life, it's been around since the 18, 19, just been around. and then they like go, and all you get is maybe one phone call. And even like when we started college, it wasn't like cell phones wasn't as, do you know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like cell phone wasn't like the way a cell phone is now. You know, back then it was like you wanted cell phones, you had to wait until after 9 for unlimited minutes. Which I tried to explain that to our kid once. Like, what do you mean, Uncle? Yeah, and I'm like, dude, don't even talk to me.
Yeah.
You want the unlimited minutes? You had to wait till after 9, and there's no such thing as texting. That was 10 cents a text.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
And you only had like 120 characters to text them.
Right.
So the communication wasn't there, and it's like if they called your landline on your dorm, right, in your dorm, they might get an answer machine, right? If that.
Right.
So,
yeah, I imagine my mom was like probably super scared, you know, like not wanting to for me to be outside of her sight. And I imagine that's how your parents probably felt too, you know, and because college isn't a thing they grew up with. You know, they didn't have that choice to go to, if they went to school, that was like one thing, but then you always came home, and that was elementary school for them, right, in Laos. And so college was a completely different kind of concept. Even going to prom is a different kind of concept. You know,
homecoming. I had to explain to my mom. I was homecoming king. Had to explain to my mom what a homecoming king was. She's like, wait, so you ruled the school? And I'm like, no, Mom, there's no kingdom to rule. Because like in their vocabulary, king and queen is like, you know, the king of Laos or the king of Thailand, right? Or
right.
You know, I remember my mom goes, wait, what does it mean you're queen? Like I brought this little fake crown or the little crown thing home. She's like, whoa, so does that mean like you rule the schools and you make rules? And I'm like, no, I don't. No. I don't even get a scepter.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then, you know, for them to have that experience, but we're growing up with it, right? For us, it's like, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what's normal. And then our parents are scared of what that is and what that means. And yeah, I just imagine her just being really, because she's unfamiliar with it, just being really scared. And girls typically didn't just leave home if they weren't married. You know,
the traditions of our people.
Yeah, and so it was a really strange concept for them.
And even in the marriage ceremony, when the girl, like when the daughter leaves with the new husband, and like the mom would wail and she would cry. You know, even though like that first night when when she's leaving, and then all the dudes have their backpacks on or whatever, you know, or not, but like Lalu, they're you know what I'm saying,
Luka,
like and all that stuff, you know, like the mom would cry, like my daughter is gone now, like she is no longer part of my family, but she is the other family, you know, take on the name and everything,
right? Yeah. And so for grad school, I went to Milwaukee, and my mom, mom did that, like she was bawling her eyes out.
Just got back from Milwaukee too. So.
And she was just like, "You're leaving me," and you know, I mean, it's
that guilt.
It's like
Did
that.
you feel guilty?
Oh my gosh, horrible guilt.
So can I ask you something? Sorry, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
How was the conversation explaining to your mom that you wanted to go to grad school, and it was across the state, across another whole state?
Oh my gosh! So I got the letter to say that I got accepted to grad school.
Did you let them know that you were thinking about grad school?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, you know, they wanted me to get my doctorate degree, right? And so I'm like, I applied to grad school.
There's no point if you don't get a PhD or a DR in the beginning.
Right. So I applied to grad school. They're like, okay, you're going to go to grad school.
Did they understand how far
No, I don't think they understood.
They thought like you were going to go to like the U of M grad school there? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't understand grad school and college, right? Because there are certain programs at certain schools, and sometimes those schools are far.
That's the one. That's the one.
Exactly. And so I remembered holding on to that letter for a long time.
Seriously? Before you told your parents?
Before I told my parents. I don't know, probably a month or
No
two,
way.
and I was finally like, okay, I have to tell my mom because I gotta move.
Yeah.
And so
they never asked if you got in, or
no, because they don't know that timeline, right? I had to do everything on my own, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would apply, and then, you know, once I know something, and then I'm supposed to tell them, you know. And so they didn't
kept secrets.
Oh my gosh, that guilt, you know. I was just but I didn't know how to tell them.
It's kind of interesting where it's like Mika girls, like their secrets they keep is like, oh, I'm pregnant, I don't want to tell my mom and dad. And for Hmong girls, it's like, I got to grad school, but it's 6 hours away, so I have to keep this.
Yeah. How do I tell them this?
Tell them?
And so when I finally told my mom, she was, I feel like maybe they were proud, but then also upset.
Mixed emotions, right?
Yeah, because I was gonna move so far away, and actually I had never driven even that far before.
Oh yeah.
Yes, before that time. And
did you guys have family down there though?
we had one uncle there,
Okay.
and so that was why it was kind of okay, because both my parents, when I moved there, like we all moved my things there, and we met my uncle, and I think that made my parents feel a little better about that.
I found out that for Hmong kids moving to different grad school, college, whatever, it's like whatever school you pick, you better find some family there to get your family on board, to get mom and dad on board, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, Uncle so-and-so is there. Okay, you'll be fine.
Right.
Or like, oh, we have auntie who so-and-so, or these our cousins here or there. They'll take care of you. Which is like so interesting how that is, Like this idea of like you would never go to like Bozeman or go out to, like Mizzou or what out there, because it's like, why? There's no Hmong people there.
Right.
Or like, there's no family there. Why would you go there?
Yeah.
Because the program I want to do is there. It's like, what are you talking about program? Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So you went down to Milwaukee, and what did you do for grad school? What was?
Yeah, I did anthropology. Got my master's in that, and then got a museum studies certificate. Because I by that time I knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know I was going to start a Hmong museum, but I was like, I'm going to help someone help build this museum because we need it in our community.
So was that in grad school, you already kind of had this idea of like, I want to help someone start a Hmong museum.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to be the person, but I'm going to be like 3 people removed. That would be me.
Yep. That's exactly right.
I just want to sit in the back, take notes, and be like, yeah, okay, I'll write that grant. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Because I never imagined starting a nonprofit.
Yeah. That's my question. Like, why 3 behind, or whatever? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just never imagined myself doing that. In fact, I didn't even know that was a thing, that I could start something, like start a business or start a nonprofit on my own. I didn't even know that was a thing I could do. And I was just like, I can learn how to do this, and then I will help this other person like 110%. I'm going to help make this happen for someone or some organization. So that was my intention.
So I want to dig into that a little bit, right? Just that mentality, that thought, right? You're going to grad school, which is like getting into grad school is pretty hard in itself, so you got to be a great student. You're getting into grad school, you're working hard, you're moving forward here, but you're still in your mind thinking, no, I can't imagine being the front runner person for that. Why do you think you were thinking that, or why did you think that was that process? And also too, if you're talking to a bunch of young Hmong kids that are about to go to grad school, like do you know what I'm saying? Like talking to them, going, look, because this is what I'm saying. I guess this is my own process. Like when I was out in Laos, I looked at these kids, and they had the bare minimum of everything, bare minimum. Education-wise, they probably, and I don't mean this in any mean way, their destiny is kind of written for them a little bit, right? Maybe they'll have like maybe if they're lucky, they get that elementary education. But they're going to end up working in a field somewhere, working at, doing some kind of harvesting, following the footsteps of their mother and their father, who followed the footsteps of their mother and their father, right? And if I was to go up to them and goes, hey, do you ever... Can I tell you about what it means to be a physical therapist or an engineer or an architect? Let me tell you about what it means to be a painter. I don't think these kids in their mind would have a category for that, right? It made me really think a lot about the idea of imagination. You can't imagine something that you don't know.
Right.
So like for you, like exactly, because the way you were talking about starting this museum, right? Is the same way I thought about food and stuff.
Yeah.
I would never imagine myself here. Like I so what do you think that there's something about us, our people, is there a kind of mentality that holds us back from imagining, or even like the idea of dreaming? Because you can only imagine and dream of stuff that you know. That's what imagination is really is.
I think it's not so much that we that it's something to do with us as like Hmong people, but I think a lot of it has to do with some of that disconnect, some of that trauma that's happened to our community, right? When we have to restart in our community in a new place, all of that is gone. Like all the doctors and the teachers, they're now that they're in a new country, they're going to be trying to survive in this new country, trying to figure it out. And so having that role model, we don't have that unless they are in our family, right? Unless we know that they exist. So I feel like those families that did have teachers or had leaders in their families, they had someone to look up to, and sometimes that helps the younger kids or the next generation be able to kind of imagine, okay, this is a path that I could take. But for a lot of people whose like lives have been disrupted, I mean, we have no one really to look up to even know that something like this can exist. And so I think that is actually what is happening, and not like innately where we just don't have that kind of imagination, but that possibility just didn't show up, for us. And we are that generation that is creating that, being those role models, that's creating that imagination for the next generation. So what you're doing, I mean, what you were talking about earlier, going back to like role models for the boys in our families, I feel like that is so important, because they need to see someone be able to do that, someone that they can connect with, and, be able to see that, oh, this person is doing this in the community.
That looks
That's
like me.
Yes, that looks like me. And that is a possibility for me. And that's why we definitely need way more like male role models for our boys, in the family.
Yeah. For you, what was the switch from I'm like the third person in the back, you know what I'm saying, taking the notes, making sure we have all our T's crossed and I's dotted, so that when we get that grant we can get it, going from there to being the one in the front going, hey, I'm gonna lead the church?
I think I felt so what I did was I started meeting with people in the Twin Cities, because I came back from Milwaukee, and I was still finishing up my paper to graduate, but I started interviewing people and trying to figure out which organizations and which leaders I can go to say, hey, this is an idea. Are you guys doing it? Can I help? And what I found was that everyone was interested, but no one was doing it.
Why?
I think everyone's interested because preserving Hmong culture and history is important to them, right? That's what they would like to do in the work that they're doing. But the mission of either personally or in their organization is not museums, is not that kind of preservation. They're preserving it in different ways. They were educators, so they want to preserve Hmong culture in that way, or they were running another nonprofit that's doing a million other things, but not museum specific. And so then I was just like, well, okay, since they're not doing, I didn't feel discouraged at that time. I felt like, okay, here, maybe what I can do is I can educate more people, and then maybe someone will rise up from that. And so I started putting together meetings, and I was telling Lee Powell, I was like, hey, do you know some people who might be interested? I started a Hmong Museum Initiative Facebook page, emailed people and said, hey, let's meet. I'll tell you all about the things I've been learning in grad school, about museums. And so I was like trying to teach people about how important museums are, and hoping that someone that I talked to would start it. And then it eventually turned to, well, no one's really coming up, but I had this group of people, so I just kept talking to them about this vision that I had, and it just kind of evolved from there, where then I started taking the lead and being like, okay, here, this is what my knowledge about museums, and this is what I can provide, and then I just kind of became just took on that role.
Yeah. It's very interesting the way you talk. It kind of parallels with me, right? Where I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just cooking. Like when I first started, it was just all like, very Italian, French-based cooking. But then like I found out that I would make like a little like Hmong like family meal, and all the cooks like, dude, it's really good, man. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. This is what I grew up eating. Well, whatever, And then eventually I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to find a bunch of like-minded people to do this kind of stuff. But I never wanted to be a cook, right? So I was just like pushing this away. And I was like, yeah, this is fun, but then I can get my real job one day when I'm a real boy, Like that's my whole thing. I felt like Pinocchio. I was like, one day when I'm a real boy, And it came to this part where it's just like this stuff just spoke in my heart, And I'm like, what am I doing? And yeah, but then it's still kind of like, well, I can always just help some dude who's, doing this, or some guy who's got all the money to do this, And it was, for me, I tell people, I was just too dumb to realize that you're not ready yet. And I just like went and tried and like failed. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just try it this way. And that didn't work. I'm like, okay, well, let's just, start doing these little dinners. And I don't know what's going to happen next. And then even like, I just kept thinking about like, well, if I had a lot of Miga friends, right? And I had to describe them what Hmong food was. And it became this 30-second elevator pitch all the time. And I'm like, I don't even know how to describe this, because you ask any Hmong people, or they go, what's Hmong food? They're like, well, I don't know. It's this, but it's not. It's like this, but it's not. And we get a lot of critics of people going, well, and I don't know if you get some critics about Hmong culture, but with the Hmong food, it's just like, it's not, the Hmong people don't even have Hmong food. It's just a mix of Lao Thai and Chinese, okay? So it's like, it's not anything. And I'm like, do you hear what you're saying about yourself? Do you hear what you're saying about your own food and your own traditions? You're not claiming any of it to be yours. You're just saying, we're just kind of like the leftovers from all these other cultures. Do you understand that plays into the psyche of your mentality, and how that then passes down to the next generation? Can you imagine a bunch of boys and girls who don't believe that they're worth anything and don't have an identity, and they say, well, we're just kind of like all this mix. We're just a mixed breed of all these Southeast Asian cultures, and we don't have our own. I'm like, that's terrible. That's horrible. How can a little boy or a little girl ever imagine something more when you don't start claiming these things? And so for me, it was that. I mean, and like, I'm hearing you, I'm feeling the same way, where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what happened with me.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And in fact, someone asked me on Friday, last Friday, what is Hmong food? And so I had to, I had like that, like you were saying, that roundabout, like 2-minute explanation of what it is. But that's absolutely right. When people don't feel that there is a Hmong food, I mean, that's just like one aspect, right? But it's that they're not seeing that there's something deeper, that makes it innately Hmong, and you can apply that to all aspects of our culture. It could be dance, it could be music, it could be the weaving we do. I mean, all kinds of things, right? It came from somewhere, and we it's hard to explain because it's not something tangible, right? That like, this is Hmong and you can hold it in front of you. It's even when you make bandao, all those symbols have a meaning behind them. All the foods, there's a reason why we make things a certain way, or cook things in a certain way, or mix things together in a certain way. And not being able to understand that or know that makes it really difficult. And that's the part where if we lose that, it's hard to get back.
Yeah, it's like the purple sticky rice.
Yeah.
Thai and Lao don't do purple sticky rice. They just do the white, regular sweet rice. And it took me like a month of just researching okay, why only Hmong people? And you're going and you're getting all these, and you're an anthropologist, so you get it. I don't have to explain this to you, but you're getting all these stories where it's all oral too. So
Exactly.
it's like, so you're reading these things that are saying, my grandfather told me, who he heard it from his father, or even like, Professor Lee Powell was the one who actually turned me on to this. And you start researching black rice, and it gets traced back to the mountains of China, where Hmong people were the first people to harvest black rice, and how it was such a special thing that the Emperor of China forbidden anybody else to have it, because he was the only, him and his family were the only ones. It was of royalty. And man, I get emotional thinking about that. So like when we make purple sticky rice back here and they mess it up and it's a deep cut to me, or when the purple sticky rice that we make is messed up or undercooked or overcooked or mushy, because that purple sticky rice is what my mom uses to make yuwa. It's like, that's our people right there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to have that in front of people, but we got the purple sticky rice, right? I think that's a beautiful way to talk about what makes Hmong, right? Is that we can bring it back to that piece, that history piece, that's our culture. These are oral histories that's been passed on from generation to generation. And here we are having it and holding it in our hands. And, I think that's a great way to describe it, what's innately inside of us that makes us Hmong.
Yeah. And I also think too that, we have to fight for that.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is so hard, because sometimes from the restaurant side, from a food side, I feel like I have to battle both sides, right? We got to battle the Mika side, and I love my Mika brothers and sisters, but just the Mika side is where it goes, well, that's just like Thai food, right? And the simplification of it.
Yeah.
Then we got to battle the Hmong side well, that's not very traditional. And it's always like, to my Hmong brothers and sisters, I'm like, dude, do you understand that we already had to fight this side? We had a staff meeting, and they, there was some food that was being messed up, and I kept saying, no, this is how we do it. In our staff meeting, I said, do you understand that if you say pizza, pasta, burgers, you don't have to tell a story about it, because everybody knows pizza, pasta, burger, like it tells itself.
Right.
But when you say Hmong food, you have to prepare for this historical background behind it. You have to have an introduction, a 3-part thing, and a conclusion.
Yeah.
And even after that, you have to have some little footnotes where they have to go and research a little bit about it. And it's a lot harder for us to explain Hmong food. So if we mess it up on the deliciousness side of it, nobody's going to listen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important. And that's the education piece, right? And that's how we can open people's eyes and pass that on, is if we can share more, if we can educate people more. And that's why I'm such a proponent of, like, if we have even more museums, if we have more cooks, if we have more people telling these stories, it'll get spread further. And then just be like, if someone said pizza and they know exactly where it came from, if someone saw purple sticky rice, they'll know exactly where it came from. That's where I would like for us to get to, and that's the mission of Hmong Museum, actually, is to be able to do that, right? That's
what I love about it, and that's why I feel myself so attracted to the Hmong Museum, when I first was introduced to it. One of the things is, okay, so we kind of all over, but I'm gonna bring us back a little bit. That's my fault. So we go, so you're going, hey, I probably should head this up because I, already know kind of how to start a museum. I talked to all these people, but now it's like the position's there, it's open. So how do you go from being kind of the note taker in the back to going, okay, let's take the charge?
Yeah. Just connecting with people, meetings. I didn't even know that what I was doing was starting a nonprofit, right? I was just like, I was just like, now I have a group of people who are actually interested. I better, do something with them. At that time, I had got a job. I just graduated from grad school, got a job up north, and I was curator at the Minnesota Discovery Center. And so I was driving 3.5 hours every month back to the Twin Cities to try to meet with this like
Where's up north?
In Chisholm, and I lived in Hibbing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's like up north.
it's up north on the Iron Range.
Yeah.
Yep. And
it's like that's like Mikawite up there.
Yeah. You know what is interesting?
What?
They're actually more similar to us
Absolutely. The Iron Range
than
people?
Yep, because they're like second, third, fourth generation immigrants. And they were able
Eastern
to
Europeans.
Yep, exactly. And so when I was up there, I felt like a connection to the individuals there, although they probably didn't see me as like that, because I'm so different, and in general outsiders are so different.
We did a show up there, and just talking to some of the people up there, it's like, oh, like your grandfather came here looking for freedom after everything that happened in the Eastern European, like the whole all the stuff, Russia, all the stands, the Ukraine, everything. Like, oh, they were coming here just to escape it. Oh, and what jobs they get? Like mining, which is like the worst, hardest, toughest job ever.
Yeah.
Oh, and then your grandfather did this, got a little piece of land, then your parents, like your dad, or your mom, and then to leave the Iron Range to come to the big city, everyone's like, don't turn your back on. I mean, come on. Like we were just talking about that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so similar.
It's the human
our
story,
experience.
Right?
Yep, exactly. And so I felt really at home up there, and all that good stuff. But I was driving 3.5 hours back to the Twin Cities to have a meeting with this group of people. We didn't form a board yet. We were just trying to figure out where we need to go or what we need to do. And then the last year that I was up north, I was coming down once a month, and every time I came down, it was a winter storm. And I was white knuckling all the way down, like, once a month.
Dude, I know that those roads going up north. And if like your car gets stuck, you're there for the weekend.
You're done, because it's snow and
no reception.
No reception. You'll be lucky if you get a hotel in the middle, in that stretch. So that was like the final straw. I was like, I have to move back to the Twin Cities. I don't mind living
or
up
meetings
north.
in the summer and spring only.
yeah, exactly. And so once I moved back, I did a bunch of research on how to get started, and we very quickly became a 501c3 nonprofit, wrote a grant and got it. And I was just like, what the heck? And but with that grant, we had to raise a match. So we received I believe it was 40,000, and we had to raise 40,000 match, and I had no idea how to do that.
So we
got another grant to match it, but then all of the board members just spent the year fundraising money in order to get that grant. And once we got that, it really propelled us forward with programming, and then we became the Hmong Museum after that.
So you guys became the Hmong Museum. And what was the next steps after that?
We wanted to, my dream was to have a place, like a physical space, because that makes sense.
I know that feeling.
Right?
I know that feeling. We became a restaurant that never had a space. I get it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The
Dude,
Parental.
our story's still the same. I'm with you. That's why, seriously, when I heard about what the Hmong Museum go through, I'm like, it's like, oh, we have all this stuff, and then we're just gonna put it in this like little area for now, so people can see it. But no, technically, this is like rental,
right?
And then one day we'll have a real space. And I always joke, one day we'll be a real boy.
Yeah,
that's my Pinocchio joke. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. That's definitely our experience. And for me, I was. I felt this urgency to start educating people and to start documenting and to start doing the work of Hmong Museum, even though we didn't have a space. So then we started partnering with organizations, other nonprofits, other museums, and doing programming in their spaces. And we became a museum without walls. That's what we were calling ourselves. That. Yeah.
A restaurant without a building. That's what we started as.
Yeah. And and so that's how we started. And we just started doing programming, and it was just this last August that we finally leased a space, and I felt comfortable enough for us to do that. And so we're going to try it this year and see if we can do it.
did you feel like every time you said, I'm the director of the Hmong Museum, they go, oh, where is it? Where can I go to look at it?
Oh, yeah.
How did that make you feel when they ask you that? And then you had to like backpedal a little bit and explain it.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you how I feel when we were like, oh, we're a restaurant. They're like, well, where can I find it? I go, here's our Instagram handle. Look at our Instagram. Don't look at anything else. Like, how did you feel?
I always...
You probably had the same feelings I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was always like, I wish we had a space, right? Mm-hmm. But then I also wanted... to continue to engage people. Mm-hmm. And so I would send them, like you said, I would send them to our website. And then I would say, hey, follow us on Facebook, go to our website. We have resources there. And when we do programming, you can come to them when we have it, so it's
like we did pop-ups.
Like pop-ups. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what it's like. Yeah. And so so I had to go do like that, like extra minute explanation.
You do a little dance.
Yep.
And did it become so easy for you to be like, I can do it in 30 seconds? When they're like, where can I go visit the Hmong Museum?
Tried.
I looked it up and there's like, I couldn't figure out the address. Where can I go visit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We had to come up with something like that so that people will understand what we're doing. And when we say we're a museum without walls, people kind of got it right away. Yeah. So that was nice. That was a nice, little tagline we figured out, and was able to use to help us to explain what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people still think that Union Hmong Kitchen is still pop-up. So we get that a lot. Like, oh, well, that space that you guys have, or you guys pop up at on Lake and Bryant. And I'm like, oh, you mean the building we're in? Like, yeah. So like, what are you guys only there Saturdays and Sundays? And like, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and and Fridays and and it's I'll be very honest with someone like when I first started as we did someone because I was just embarrassed and it was always like, okay kid, but when you're a real like when you guys have a real restaurant, and I'm like, look, don't we suffer the same as you? Like, don't we hustle the same? And a lot of it, what really helped was some of these really iconic big chefs from here, Mika chefs, like Alex Robert, who owns Alma Cafe and Brasa, and like guys like him who, chefs like him who took me under and said, hey, we got you. Tim Nivers, who has Moochie's, and St. Dinette, who I remember I was fumbling at an event where it's like all the best chefs were cooking, and I was there like fumbling. I'm like, I don't know what cup goes where it's fork goes where. I'm like, and I'm like, look, man, I cook fire, and I have fire, and then I cook meat on it. I remember Tim Nivers is like, hey, if you need anything, let me know. I'll help you. So nice. And he came and goes, put this wine glass here, put this here, and he's and he's really good at that. He goes, the fork just started out here. It was like a very bougie event, and it's just like, the 12 best restaurants and chefs were cooking for it, and I was like there, and I'm like, just play along, man, just play along. And he came over and he said, anything you need, chef. He said, anything. And I remember he called me chef, and I felt like, what? You think so? And he goes, anything you need, let me know. I'll help you. And I'm like, hey, I don't know, like which wine should go first. He looks at our wine list and he goes, I would set it up this way. And I'm like, okay, awesome.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And it was like these operators just came alongside and says, we got you, man. Like, you're one of us, which I never felt like I did anything to make their stature anymore. Like, I didn't like, oh, I worked for him for 20 years before he, no, it wasn't like that. It was right away. Guys like Alex, guys like Tim came, and it made me not feel like the Hmong kid who like just was able to kind of look up, and be like, hey, and then that kind of built confidence. And next time we did events, I'm like, okay, this is what Tim told me. Okay, this is what Alex said. Okay, this is what we do, and that's kind of, and that took away and that thought of that kind of started taking that part away, and eventually then it was a big turn for me when some of these younger chefs came up and said, hey, we want to do a pop-up. How should we do it? I'm like, oh shoot, you're asking me, like, and it'd be like, this is where we went wrong, and this is where we did good at. Like, I would say the wrong, use it as a sign of warning, and then here's what we did that was good at. Like, let me know if you need anything. And that's like the greatest thing I love saying is like, let me know if you need anything.
Oh, that's so great, because it's true. Like, within the Hmong community, when there isn't something there for people to see or to go to, it's kind of like, oh well, they're just oshisu,
Yep.
right? Like, you know, they're not
Say, hey,
serious.
man, when you get in a real job.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. Like,
Yes,
I'll be very honest.
exactly.
Like, cause like I've heard that said to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. But it's the people in the industry, you know, that like sees us and sees the potential, because we fill a niche, you know, that they can't fill, right? Like in the museum world, there isn't another museum that can do what Hmong Museum does, right? There isn't another chef that can do Chef Yeah, you know, like that's why when you're there and you're just like your authentic self, like doing Hmong food, or, you know, when we're just trying to do Hmong programming, in the industry, they know where that gap is, and they know that this is a need that could be really great in the community, because they can't fill that. And so that support from our partners, you know, other libraries and other museums was so great, because that's what gave me the confidence to be like, okay, look, we can do this, because this giant museum allowed us to go and do something in their space, and they really love what we do. So there must be some value to that. And so just gaining that confidence really helped me to be okay with not having a space until we're ready to, right? And it also like helped to show me that, you know, if we're really strong in our mission, it doesn't matter if we have a space or not, because it's going to happen.
Yeah. I feel you on that, especially with the project of Vinay. Like, it's been such an up and down, where it's like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Like, I remember I was picking up chairs. We were picking out chairs and tabletops, and I don't care. I don't give a crap about this. Like, I want to get this thing going.
Yeah.
You know, and then it really hits me where it's like, no, I want to be meticulous about it, right? Because these pieces mean stuff. And we haven't had anything in our culture where we can say, we can take a time to have stuff that we can pick out that means something. The way that our architect designed this kind of trestle thing, like when you come to the restaurant, you'll see it. It represents those the top of those huts, those NV9s. You know what I'm saying? It's like almost like it looks like a roof, and it represents where my mom and dad used to live, and I was raised in. I was probably born in, but it's made out of wood. You know, so it looks like it's kind of from a certain angle, it looks really cool and artistic. But from the direct angle you look at it, it looks like the top of these little huts, you know, or everything from we have all these little pieces that are built out of cinder blocks. Why? Because growing up, my dad would take cinder blocks and he built grills out of it. And in the back of our house was made out of these like cinder blocks from Menards for $1 each. But then you come in, people might think, oh, that's the cool way of making it look industrial. No. That represents dad, you know, or the way that we're going to fill up, you know, greens, mom, ote, around, you know. And I haven't had time in my life to just think about these things, you know, and say, this is what it represents. That Vinay is truly a love letter to my mom and dad, you know.
That's beautiful.
And so, like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I think my mom and dad's like, dude, like, mito chuja.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no. We get to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing this because this is what the trend is, and it might not aesthetically make sense to some designers, but it's not their letter, you know.
Exactly.
And we haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
You know. And I think of the Hmong Museum.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this to you before: is you're creating an archive of our people. You know, why do you think that this archive of our people's traditions, culture is important?
It's, oh my gosh.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important because traditionally the Hmong people are an oral people, right? And it's easy to lose that when there is major disruptions like war, which we've had if you look at our history, like over and over and over again.
It wasn't just like the Secret War. Like that's
No.
the thing that Hmong people have to realize. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, there's many wars before that, and so there's many lost, things that we've lost, and that's why I turned to museums, because we could really document and capture it, and we can even document the oral piece of our culture and keep it. I think about it as like the root, right? If we don't have the roots to keep us grounded, we're gonna just be floating around not knowing, what things are.
The leaves and the branches die.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so that's how I see Hmong Museum. That's how I see the work that I'm doing, is that it is that root that people can always come back to, and to be able to be like, okay, this is me. This is what makes me. And sometime in the future, if I ever have grandkids or great grandkids, they can be able to come back and be able to see that and be like, okay, I've got a place that represents me. And that's what Hmong Museum is. I believe that history is not static, and there's many different ways to represent history, right? And so I'm a believer in documenting everything, like as much as we can, because there are so many different perspectives in history. Like your parents' history or experience during the war is different from my parents' experience, right? And so capturing all of that is so important, so that we have a really well-rounded picture of what that experience is, and then to be able to get that first person narrative from them. Like, can you imagine if your great grandkids heard your mom's voice, right? Like, that is so important for us to have, so that we can so that our future generations can come back to it and be able to kind of like take that, right, and say that that's them. And so that's what an archive does.
And for the first time in our history, we're able to do it. Like, do you know how crazy this is? I was thinking about this, because I think about these things when I drive around. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, our parents could, like, they only had what they could like literally carry. And there wasn't like phones that they took pictures of stuff. Like, that's why, like, you and I don't have a lot of childhood photos. Like, so when we do these TV shows, they're like, oh, send us your childhood photos. I'm like, I have like 5 that I rotate through all the TV shows, and it's the same ones. And my mom's always like, oh, me too, like the door's always the same or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, mom, there's only like 5 that I rotate. That's because that's all we have. Right. Yeah. And my mom and dad, like all those pictures we have from VNI and from us being kids, they actually keep it in a lockbox at the bank. Like, you know how crazy this is? While people put in like, deeds and money and, just all the important stuff, like probably relating to money, that if your house burns down, at least you have that there. Like, they put pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, for them to pull one of those pictures out, like my brother has to go in, sign into this. Do you know what I'm saying? You're thinking some kind of like spy document. No, it's just baby pictures of me, and then my brothers and sisters, and so like, I mean, it's very important. And like, right now, right? You say like, we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to record, the ability to do all these things. And one of the really cool things that we want to do in VNI, which I'm just going to give you the secrets, is, how there's like a guest book people sign when coming in. We're not going to do a guest book. I found an old like school tape recorder with the cassette tapes. And when people come in, I want them to hit record and tell us their name, what they had to eat, what they ate, and what was their favorite. And and just like the old school ways of how we used to do that, and then and then your uncle, your aunt, whoever, they record and they send it back. Yeah. And I want to keep that right, because I found this little recorder deck. You have to hit both of that. You have to hit that both record, and then we're gonna take those voices of all the guests coming in talking, and then we want to put them on our website, and people can come in and listen to hear the voices of all these people, all these guests that have dined with us. I really wish, and I'm gonna ask my mom and dad, I really wish we had some of those with my grandma and my aunts and uncle, and to listen to them, and then our voices as kids, that we would tell them stories of our days. My gosh, I have a story related to that, because I used to do that.
we would get the recordings from, our family, right, in Laos or Thailand, and where they were. And so my dad would play it, and then he would tell the kids like us to like record something to our cousins. And we would like, sing on the recordings and talk to them. And I remembered my dad had this like little, it was like a toy suitcase, but it was like just big enough for a little cassette player or cassette to be in it, and he had a bunch of it, and they moved around with it forever. And then when I started Hmong Museum, I started thinking, oh, it would be nice if we had this. So I went and asked my dad, and he had thrown it out the year before. And I was just like, oh my gosh, too late. Like that was a huge regret I have.
I want to make a call to all the Hmong people out there. If you guys have these tapes, like send it to the Hmong Museum.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm being for real. And we can, I don't know, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I think it'd be awesome to have an area where these cassette tapes are and the old school, and man, and just to have it play on repeat. All these stories, all these daneng, or almost like all these messages. It was, I don't know, it was so important for us. I didn't know. My grandma, I remember that was the only way she can hear the voice of her son and some of her, grandchildren that she never got to see.
Right.
That they're still there, and she passed away a bunch of years ago, but never got to see them. But she would hold that cassette player like it was a child, and she hit play on it and listen to their voices, and then she would record back.
Yeah.
And sometimes like they would sing into it. And I don't know, I would love to get that and just have that be a piece there, because that's so us.
Yeah, I would too, and I would implore people to, even if you didn't want to give it to us or anything, like don't throw it out.
Yes, don't throw it out. Send the recordings in to Mai and the Hmong Museum.
Yeah.
And I think that would be incredible that you send it in and write a piece about it and say, this is who these people are.
Yeah.
Because I think that like our younger generation needs to know that.
I think so too. Yeah.
They need to know that. They need to know what it means to be like so distant from family. Because again, like you going on campus 5 minutes away from your parent, your mom's heart broke.
Yeah.
And you going to Milwaukee, she broke even more. But it's like, it's far, but it's not like out of the realm of seeing each other. But imagine across the world.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's not like we had phones or anything, but like to send that cassette. And my dad told me my uncle would have to walk into town, and that'd be a while, and then it would cost him money to get the cassette, to get the stamp. So they actually would send it, would make sure that they had money inside tucked away for them too. So, and then like the whole recording process, buying batteries and all that stuff for the cassette recorder, there's a whole process to get this across. And you would send the cassette, and it would be maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you'll get something back. And hopefully it wasn't destroyed during the delivery too.
Right. Yeah.
I remember my dad would have to fix it by taking it apart and then putting it in another cassette because it was broken or it was all tangled up.
Yeah.
And that's how grandma would hear the voices of her family.
Yeah.
But I think that's like, to me, that's like such a huge part of who we are. To me, that's Vinai, right? Like how many cassette tapes have gone through Vinai, people listening. And that's funny because like when I talk about this, people our age are like, oh my gosh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think that this whole archive thing it's so important to have. And you guys have a location now. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we leased a space at Hmong Village. And we specifically chose Hmong Village because for us, that's the center of commerce.
Oh, yeah.
Hmong people are already going there. There's we can reach that audience that we want to reach, and we would be central, right? And we want that, right? I imagined like, if we had a museum like in downtown St. Paul, like who would be able to get there? Which Hmong person would be able to get there? Which Hmong family would be able to get there? Find parking, find our building, walk to it, all that stuff. And so I wanted to be really accessible. So we're at Hmong Village right now in room B22, and We have an exhibit up of a local photojournalist. His name is Xia Yang, and he's been photographing events in the Hmong community for the last 20 years. And so that's our newest exhibit right now. And we're hoping to connect with more artists, more folks, more history people, and create a space where we can showcase, in the Hmong community, showcase our own things. You know, that's so important to be able to have the voice to be able to do that ourselves. And then also to do programming in that space. So we're hoping to do some pandao workshops, other kinds of workshops that could educate people. Like you were saying, like we got to pass it on and educate people.
Yeah, I think the education part is very important. I think that sometimes a lot of people come into museums already going, oh yeah, I know this, but I think that coming into a museum that completely you don't know anything, and just be a listener, be a sponge and soak it in. Yeah, that's very, very important, you know. And I really think that's really cool. What other exhibits you guys have planning coming up, or you know your guys are thinking through?
Yeah, so we recently worked with two Hmong women artists. They're sisters, Won and Yo, and they are creating the largest pandao.
Oh wow!
The world's largest pandao for Hmong Museum. So the project started with Enda selling these pandao kits. It went out into the world. They send it back to the artists.
That's amazing.
Yep. And so they're creating it for us right now. So I'm excited. That's going to be the next exhibit. And I mean, we have many more things we want to show, but that's going to be the next one. So I'm excited to see.
That's so cool.
How big it is and what it looks like, because it went all over the United States.
Really?
Yep.
That's so awesome. I think that's so indicative of who Hmong people are. It's like we do our own little thing here, our corner of the world, and then we put it together. You know, this has kind of been the anthem, the echo of our people. I think, I don't know, I just think about what you're doing, and it's incredible because it's just in kind of how you got started too. It's such a parallel to how we got started. So like halfway through, I'm like, wait, are you starting a restaurant too? And I think that there's just so many of these little pieces where we find commonality, and I've always loved teaming up with you guys whenever we get a chance to do that little kapong thing and together. That was so fun. I think that to talk about our people and not talk about food, I think that it's like kind of hard to do, and so we always end up talking about food. But just even talking to you right now, I'm like, oh man, I have so many other ideas that are popping in my head right now. So once we get offline, I'm gonna try to throw them out at you, see what your thoughts are. But here, my last question to you is, I've kind of been asking a few of our guests this, but if you can go back, say 20 years and talk to Mai 20 years ago, what would you tell her?
Gosh, yeah, I would tell her, don't be scared and just keep doing it. Be confident. Just keep doing it.
What if you could talk to like young people, like the younger generation, or just the young kids who's listening to this? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to take every opportunity that they can get, like try to learn as much as they can and experience as much as they can, because that's the way that they're going to figure out what they want to do, what their passion is. And I was thinking about this the other day when I was driving, actually, is that, that's, I think, the most important thing for kids to find their motivation in life and their passion in life is if they take that opportunity to just experience it. And and I encourage everyone to do that. If people end up in museums or preserving Hmong culture, that would be fantastic. But I mean, finding your passion, you can still preserve Hmong culture in any field, like you in cooking, right? And so that's what I would encourage.
I really love that last piece you put there about the preserving Hmong culture in any field, because you're Hmong. Wherever you go, you glean like our parents did and our grandparents did. You harvest like our parents and our grandparents did, and that's gonna stick to you, and you're gonna stick to it. You know, you're Hmong wherever you go. You know, I kind of lied. Here's my last one to you. And I've been thinking about this is, do you like, was there a point for you where you fully embrace your Hmongness? I guess if that's the way to say, I don't know how to describe it, but that's just the best way to describe it is like, or were you always kind of like, hey, I have this vision of preserving our culture and I want to do it through museums?
No. Yeah. When I was growing up, it was hard for me to embrace Hmong culture because it was so different from what I wanted to do, which was like be in school and being with my friends, and then being at home was just so hard. You know, being Hmong was so hard. You know, when you're living in that two different worlds, and I didn't come to really appreciate being Hmong until I was an adult. You know, like in college, and really like seeing like how important it is to know myself so that I can know where I'm going. And that was really important for me to be able to do that. So I didn't do that until I was in college. And when I realized, I'm like, I have no idea what Hmong history is. I have no idea where I came from. And so that's when I started exploring and, you know, learning.
Yeah. One of the things I learned with this podcast is that as much as there's like young Hmong kids listening to it, you know, like young Hmong people, there's also parents. And I've gotten messages from Hmong parents that says, hey, like I have a 16-year-old, I have a 17-year-old or whatever, I have a high schooler, and they're struggling. What do I do? And just hearing you say that is kind of that answer to those moms and dads, right? It's okay. Like my father believed wholeheartedly that if I let my son go out there and experience these things, he'll come back because in his heart he's Hmong.
Yeah.
And it's like we were saying in the beginning, it's, man, I was just a stupid kid. But like the things that I was saying and doing was damaging to them. And I feel like today, in a weird way, I'm just trying to still say I'm sorry. By like what I'm doing, you know? And it's like, I don't know. I often think about that kid who was just scared, but then he didn't know how to like talk about it, so he just hurt his parents. And when I hear parents go, hey, my high schooler's struggling, I'm like, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
They're gonna wake up one morning like I did when I was 20-some, living in college by myself, and look in the mirror. Before I brushed my teeth, I remember I looked in the mirror, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And that slowly started this journey back, you know?
Yeah.
So so it's so beautiful to hear that from somebody, you know, who has gone through the same thing I've gone through, where it's like, I don't feel alone. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just the idiot that always, you know, but so many of the stories I've heard of a lot of them among, you know, people my age is like, yeah, I did that. And I always add the caveat of, man, maybe I'm just still trying to say sorry, that hopefully I'll make up for it in a way, or, you know, like that little kid who did something to hurt their parents. Like, I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry, Dad. Like, you know, I still sometimes I feel like that little kid. That's why there's such an urgency. I don't know about you with the Hmong Museum, but I felt like there was such an urgency to get this V9 thing going and feeling very tsamo about it. You know, that it's not where it should be, because if it is this love letter to my mom and dad, like how much do I really love them if this thing can't get up and can't get going, you know?
I feel you. That's exactly how I feel about Hmong Museum. I mean, that was my biggest motivation, was to show my dad that I was going to help him leave a legacy, you know, to his future grandkids. You know, that's why museums exist, is to do that. And unfortunately he passed, but you know, but he knew, I think he knew that I was working really hard on it and to get it going.
I think he knew. That's like the kid way of saying, where people goes, are your parents proud? I think they're proud. I always say I think. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel you completely on that urgency, that motivation is from our parents, and telling them like, hey, this is what I want to
honor.
This is how you, right. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think not I think, I should stop saying I think. You are honoring them. I don't know how to explain this, but I respect you and admire you so much in what you're doing for your family, but but on a grander scale, like for our people. Man, it just hearing the story of the Hmong Museum makes me more confident. Like today was like a rough day with some stuff with V9. Like it's just like, oh, is this ever gonna get done, right? And so even having this conversation today, going, yeah, I will, And so thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Oh, I forgot. If people want to know more about the Hmong Museum, well, where could they go online? We'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so they can find us on Facebook at Hmong Museum. Or they can go online, hmongmuseummn.org. And we also have a new education website called learnoke.org, which has tons of resources for teachers, parents, and students, and articles that's easy to read and learn all about your history on that website.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yep.